In this video presentation, we will be covering the Privacy API, and I will demonstrate adding a null data provider to the plugin project. This presentation is an extract from lesson 2 of the 12 lessons in the Moodle plugin development by example course. A link to the course page is in the description, and a link to a video description of all the course content is at the end of this presentation. But before we start, if this video proves to be useful and informative, please don't forget to like it. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to this channel for more useful content in the future. If you are so inclined, click the bell notification to be informed when we upload new content. So the Privacy API and things surrounding privacy. The General Data Protection Regulation, generally shortened to GDPR, is a regulation in EU law on data protection and privacy within the European Union and the European Economic Area, and it came into effect around the 25th of May in 2018. And it basically gave citizens the right to request information about the data being held about them, access all of that data, actually request and have all the data deleted and completely forgotten. And many other countries will also have some kind of privacy data protection legal obligations. Us in the UK are no longer members of the EU or the EEA, so we will have our own kind of data protection and privacy. We have a data protection framework in the UK, so I suspect other countries will also have similar kind of things. Okay. So the Privacy API was made available in Moodle 3.5 following that, following the GDPR regulations, and has been improved several times in later versions. So basically, the API allows developers to describe the personal data it is storing and provides the means for that data to be discovered, exported, and deleted. So it's a requirement now. If you look at all the core plugins and core components, you will find the privacy files implemented that we'll talk about in a little bit. So plugins should implement one metadata provider and optionally one or more request providers. So metadata provider describes the data and its purpose, and the request provider acts upon user requests, such as the right to be forgotten or a subject access request, a request about what data is being held. Many Moodle plugins don't tend to store personal data. That tends to be a core function. But there may be, cases where you do actually store outside of the Moodle main tables, user tables. So, for example, enrollment plugins will normally use the Moodle enrollment tables for the enrollment. So, not really providing or storing the user data somewhere else. So if you don't store personal data, then you have to define a null metadata provider, and null providers are implemented extending null provider extension class at that in that namespace, which is the opposite of defining an extension to the provider class. So, and then you have a manager class that provides the glue between these two different components of the privacy functionality. So for more information about the GDPR and privacy, there's some links there for you to have a look at. I'm going to take this opportunity to actually integrate the Privacy API into our authentication plugin. So back in our code, let's integrate a null provider for our plugin. So we'll go ahead, build a folder, classes, okay, privacy. That's our folder, okay? And in there we will define a new file, PHP, what's this? And the file name needs to be provider. Would help to spell it right, provider. So this is our file, usual stuff at the top. Okay, namespace comes before your defined line. It's always got to be the first thing declared in the file if you are using namespaces. So nothing before it. Straight after the doc block, you declare your namespace. Okay, and our class is called provider because our file is called provider PHP, and what we're doing is we implementing, so not extending, implementing the core now provider for the privacy. And then the only thing we need to define in this file is the function called getReason, and we return what looks like some kind of code, but it isn't. It's actually a language string. So what we need to do then is also define a language string for our privacy metadata. To be more accurate, you're actually returning the name of the string that rather than the actual string itself. So let's switch back to our language file and do something there. So our language file, we've added the string for the privacy metadata, and it basically says the text file authentication plugin does not store any personal data. And that, in a nutshell, is integrating the Privacy API in your plugins. Very simple, and in lots of cases that's all you need to do, because like I said, a lot of plugins don't actually store user data. But if you did, you would need to look into the documentation to find out how you actually do specify a provider. Okay, so that's it for the presentation. To watch other extracts from the course, click on the playlist link, or alternatively, watch the video describing the course content. Don't forget to subscribe and like, and thanks for watching.